culture we need, all of us, I think, to try and fight against.
I suppose on the one kind of prong, not the health and safety one, but the kind of causing offence to other groups, if you like. I suppose essentially you could say sort of being politically correct is just kind of maybe having an awareness, if you like, of discriminations and prejudices which do exist, and kind of trying to work through that and be kind of inclusive of people and stuff like that. Would you say that's kind of fair? Or?
I think that's a reasonable thing to say, but what you've got is a situation, I think, now where it's all gone way too far. Okay, fairness, great. I'm a great believer in, it doesn't matter what colour someone is, what sex someone is, what their sexual orientation is. It matters not. What matters is the kind of person they are, and if they've got the skills and abilities to do a certain job. But in order of this sort of fairness and anti-discrimination, we have Harriet Harman's bill, the Equalities Bill, which is a prime example of this going way too far. You start to get into a situation where you have all women shortlists for certain positions, Conservative Party being a prime one that does that from time to time. How is that possibly fair? What if the all-women shortlist just happens to have 8 absolutely useless women on it, and the one bloke who wanted to stand would have been the next Prime Minister? It's crackers. We can't be going into this position where, in order to be more fair, we actually start discriminating against another set of people.
I've heard kind of political correctness being described as kind of, at worst, institutional politeness, if you like. So rather maybe than an attempt to curb freedom of speech or influence the way that people kind of think and force people to kind of think in a certain way, if you like, maybe it's just kind of, if you like, an attempt to be, maybe occasionally clumsily attempt to be kind of more inclusive of people, if you like. Do you think that's a kind of a fair kind of suggestion, that being PC is not some kind of toxic kind of master plan, if you like, to try and control the way people think? It's just maybe clumsily an attempt for people to try and be kind of inclusive. And I suppose you kind of think, well, maybe that's gone too far, if you like.
I would agree that a large number of people who I would accuse of being overly politically correct actually are doing it for very good reasons. I'm not saying that these people are, devils. They are misguided, in my view. And the whole point is that by argument and coherent, reasonable discussion, we're trying to get across that point to them. I mean, I've got a great example of this. Only this week, I'm a hospital governor at Russell's Hall, and there was a decision taken to ban flowers being brought in on the wards. Okay. Now, on that governor's meeting, I was the only one who queried that decision.
What was the thinking behind kind of banning the flowers?
The thinking, and I can see logic with it, so don't take this as an outstanding attack on what's been done there. I'm merely pointing to something that needed more discussion. If you've got flowers in water and it's left there for more than a day, there are infections, germs that can breed in the water. Also, there's electrical equipment now by hospital beds. You knock a vase over with water in. There was an example there, lost 10 grand's worth of equipment through water going onto the electrics. So I can see the argument, but that decision was going to be pushed through, and effectively it was, despite my one person arguing against it, without any real information getting out to the public. So Joe Public goes down the street and sees, you can't take flowers to the hospital anymore, and that's been done for all very nice, very good reasons, but it's still controlling what you do, and it's not been explained to the public, and the public, in my view, haven't had a chance to really sort of correspond on that, discuss it properly, and it's going to cause ill will.
Do you think you kind of relish perhaps being politically incorrect, if you like?
I don't know whether I relish it. I just think I am. I can't. I personally don't go out there to try and cause offence or political incorrectness. But what I do is I go out there to try and say my point of view. And as I've said before, there's probably loads of people, in fact maybe the majority, don't agree with the things I say from time to time, but I've got a right to say them, just as you've got a right to say what you think, and we'll discuss it, and that's called democracy.
We hear this kind of phrase quite often, it's political correctness gone mad. Like, do you think, or are you perhaps concerned sometimes that kind of phrase is trotted out maybe as a bit of a sort of lazy shorthand for anything that someone just happens to kind of disagree with, if you like?
Yeah, I think there's a great danger with arguments against political correctness, as with a lot of other discussions of our day, Europe, various other things, that standard cliches are trotted out When I hear people say political correctness gone mad, my heart sinks, because it really is lazy talk, and it's the kind of thing that makes you easy to dismiss. There's lots of people out there who want to write off anyone who disagrees with the status quo as a nutter, or a headbanger, or various other phrases I've heard. What we need to do is talk sensibly and coherently and calmly and just discuss the matter, because it's not mad to question the status quo.
We've had another email in which came in a bit earlier, which says, question for Bill. This is from Peter in Kings Winford. He says, changing what people say is a very powerful way of changing what they think. For example, if you look at 60s and 70s television, it was common to hear words and phrases that today would be regarded as completely unacceptable. Political correctness was one of the ways that changed this. However, as a political tool, political correctness seems to have been harnessed best by the left. Is this why Bill is so against it?
Well, I wouldn't disagree with the premise of what he's saying. Changing the words that you use does effectively change the way that people start to think over a period of time. And I don't hide the fact that I'm not of the left. I am a conservative in many ways. But I still believe, I've got great friends who are absolutely rabid Marxists and socialists to the core, and there's nothing I like more than sharing a pint with them and having a good old discussion. Now, if we get to the point where we're all using these nice tame words and we're all frightened to offend each other, well, where's the discussion? Where's the thought process? And at the end of the day, we end up this homogenised group of people being ruled by people in London who don't really have to care about what we think, because we don't think much.
Maybe this is kind of one which is a bit off the wall, I don't know, maybe turning it around a little bit. I suppose, in a sense, you could sort of say that, in a way, the campaign against political correctness are kind of aiming to inform people of behaviour that you kind of don't necessarily agree with, behaviour or kind of language, and you sort of, I guess, in a sense, propagating a certain kind of way of thinking within society. I suppose, in a sense, could you turn that round and say, well, in a way, that is a kind of form of political correctness, telling people what they shouldn't be kind of saying, and do you see what I mean?
I see what you're saying, but what our aim is, and it's a really simple one, is that we want to get back to a point where people can say exactly what they think. And I genuinely, I would be delighted, when I'm going out knocking doors on my campaigning for various things, if someone disagrees with me and they've got a great argument, I want to hear it. I really do. This is why I do these things, because I'm interested in politics, I'm interested in people's points of view. What I don't want to hear is people saying, you're all the same, it doesn't matter, because then we're losing democracy in this country, and that's the problem, because everyone talks with the same words, the same language, we all try and come across nice, we all seem the same, and that's negative to me.
So where does the campaign go from here? You've had a number of meetings already with sort of guest speakers, and I assume you've got more in the kind of pipeline. Yeah,
we have. We've had meetings so far with the main sort of guest we had was Philip Davis MP, who's the spokesman for the campaign in Parliament. So a lot of the things that we raise, we can feed down to London, and they will be passed on to Philip, who will on occasion raise them in Parliament. So we've got an outlet.
Quite a key figure. with the campaign against.
Yeah. And he's a Conservative MP, but he's not by any means a government insider. He said that he doesn't want to be in the cabinet. He wants to be there to represent people's views, and he will say whatever he feels is the right thing to say. So he's a bit of an independent under a Conservative banner, I'd like to think.
So when's your kind of next schedule, if you've got one?
We haven't got a next scheduled meeting, because we've had a couple of speakers lately. We had Mark Reckless as well, who's very similar to Philip Davis. But what we have got, if that's okay, I'd like to tell people my email address, which, if you contact me on this, I will keep you informed as to our events. It's Milroy, which is MILROY 666 at AOL.com, and please, feel free to get in touch with me. I'll keep anyone informed to our oncoming events. Even if you disagree with us, I'd be delighted for you to come along and put your point of view. Honestly, we'll share a point with you.
So if you absolutely agree with what Bill's been saying today, get in touch. I'm sure he'd be welcome you along to the meeting. But by the same stretch, if you think, well, I'm not too sure about this, and you've kind of got some points to put which perhaps would challenge Bill a little bit, absolutely get in touch as well. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to hear from you. We mentioned, of course, which is, I know you like to kind of maybe say that it's separate kind of things, standing as for the Conservatives at the next kind of election. One of the criticisms maybe that which Labour have perhaps been putting across more than others is that this kind of comprehensive spending review is a kind of ideological move by the Conservatives, if you like, to sort of scale back the state. Would you kind of share those views? Are you kind of pleased to see the state being sort of scaled back, if you like?
I'm not entirely sure that it is ideological, although I'd like to say as an aside, I don't see what's wrong with ideals or in politics. I think that the fact that Labour attacked the Conservatives for having ideals probably says a bit about them. In my opinion, the spending review had some successes and some failures. I was desperately disappointed with the defence spending review. I really don't feel as Conservatives we should have been cutting back on defence expenditure the way that we did. But I am a mere member of the party. I'm not in David Cameron's ear as much as I'd like to be. I don't think he'd have much time for that. So I think the overall thrust of what's going on, it's unavoidable. As we all know, there's got to be cuts because we're virtually going broke as a country. I think all parties agree with that. It's just where the emphasis of those cuts lie, and it's very, very, very difficult. I would tend to agree with the overall thrust of it, although there are areas that I'm not happy with.
Well, we're almost out of time, almost at midday. Bill, thank you very much for your time this morning. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from you as the campaign sort of gets going more, and it sounds like you might have more kind of members than perhaps Lib Dems in the Dudley Borough, because only one kind of councillor left for the Lib Dems now. Of course, we've got Chris Bramwell coming on next week, and it'll be interesting to see what he kind of makes of the coalition government and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you also to Kate Millen, the Assistant Director for Libraries at Dudley Metropolitan Borough Council, for her time earlier. Mark Spate will be up next with Saturday Requests, and then he's here with Black Country Sport from about 2 onwards. So do get in touch, studio at thebridgeradio.net. Phil will be in next week, so please do stick around and join us then. And thank you very much all for your time this morning, and thank you, Bill. See you later.
Live across the southern Black Country, linking communities together 24 hours a day, every day. Your station, your town. Ashwood, Buckpool, Cradley Heath, Stourbridge. This